Wake up and all your memories mud. You down a coffee in the lobby just to shake it all off. All the cool cats from the alley seem to rally back out.
Welcome in, Day Oneers, to the Day One Football Podcast. This is episode number 21. 22.
Sure. Yeah.
22 because I said 21 yesterday. I'm with my co-host, Day One Big Mike, the Day One Daddy Stephen King, and we're going to talk some Week 5 preview stuff, along with, as always, A1 News, and starts and sits of the week. So, how are you guys doing today?
Not too bad. I'm getting ready for this week 5. Big game on Thursday. The Bucks and the Bears. I will probably be watching, and we'll probably have beers. So, Steve, how are you doing?
I heard beers and my ears perked up. I got excited. So, no, Thursday should be good. That is, tomorrow. So it should be a good game. I'm excited. A lot of injuries to deal with for the Bucks. So the Bears have a good chance of actually beating them. And it's two good defenses going at each other. So it should be a fun game for football, maybe not for fantasy. Colin?
Yeah, I bet. Yeah, the Bears tomorrow is going to be fun to watch them lose. That offense is horrendous. Mike, are you excited?
It's not going to be fun.
No.
There's nothing about that game that screams fun. So
I hope the Bucks bring those creamsicle orange jerseys back. That'd be cool. That'd be sick tomorrow if they did that.
Just have the Bears wear their orange too, just all orange.
Yeah, that'd just give me a seizure while I'm watching. That'd be great. So let's jump into that A1 news. So injuries off the top, COVID galore. Mr. Stephon Gilmore, the star-studded cornerback from the New England Patriots, has been confirmed is he on the list, or he's just confirmed he has COVID? So I imagine he's going to miss like 2 weeks, right?
Yeah, he did go on the COVID list. And yeah, I don't really know much because I honestly don't know the rules with the COVID list. I know it's usually 2 weeks. It could be 10 days. I'm not too sure on that, but yeah.
I'm excited. Well, if that's the case, then we're probably going to have another week of Brian Hoyer, which would just be disgusting, or Stidham. But yeah, and then also a Raider player that was unnamed got COVID, and 2 more Tennessee Titans. And one of them was Corey Davis, who was actually, bumped to the COVID list as well. So yeah, COVID's a thing, and it's finally hitting week 4 and 5-ish. Steven, any thoughts?
No, COVID sucks. COVID stinks. And I think the Broncos should automatically win their game against the Patriots because I hate the Patriots. Go Broncos. Colin?
Well, speaking of Broncos, the next guy on the injury list is KJ Hamler, and he's ruled out for week 5. Steven, what do you think of KJ Hamler's injury? I'll push it right back to you.
Considering he hasn't played pretty much at all. He played week 3, didn't really do much. Played in week 2 a little bit, didn't really do much. So I can't really speak on how he's gonna. I really liked him coming in this year. These injuries stink. It's his hamstring, and it's just going to be a nagging injury throughout the year. I think he's a young guy. He should bounce back at some point, but I think this year is going to be a rough one for his hamstring. Mike, do you know anything more?
Not really. It seems like just a slight hamstring strain. I really hope they just keep him out and don't bring him back until he's 100%. A little update on the Raiders player. It was Maurice Hurst. It was one of their defensive tackles. Really not a huge deal, but still a player on their defense nonetheless. So, Colin, do you want to get into more of these injuries? Because there is a ton.
Yeah, well, before we move on from KJ Hamler, Steven, they're playing the Patriots this weekend, and we know how, that offense is kind of shaky. Do you think this is potentially a breakout for Jerry Judy, since he'll be really the only real option, or is it another Tim Patrick week?
I actually really liked what I saw from Tim Patrick, and I think Judy they're going to try to shut down the run first. You're going to see that. It's the Patriots. They're going to scheme against the run because That's where you see the most talent on the field. You have Philip Lindsay and Melvin Gordon, and I don't think they're going to be too concerned with Drew Lock could be back, so we'll have to watch out for that. But there's nobody else. Like Fant is probably going to be injured. Yeah, so Judy could have a decent game, but I think that defense is so strong. I'm not going to play him unless I have to at this point because of bye weeks or COVID weeks. So, Colin.
Yeah, so let's move on. So this is the limited list. We have Hollywood Brown, Adam Thielen, OBJ, Ridley, Waller, Mostert, Devonta Parker, and Mr. Jimmy G. Mike, who did you want to speak on specifically?
I just want to speak on, I guess, I'll speak on Thielen and OBJ. Now, if anyone had Thielen last year, you're going to know that he is basically limited almost up till game day, almost every week. He's not the youngest guy running out there, so don't worry about that. OBJ, it was a toe injury. I don't really see any big issues. I guess I can talk a bit about Jimmy Garoppolo too. He was limited because he first came back to practice, and I'm pretty sure they don't want to ramp him up to 100%. So those are three guys that I'm just gonna talk about like real quick. But I mean, monitor them. That's realistically what you're gonna get with the rest of them. But I'll let Steve talk about his guys.
So you brought up Jimmy G, and there's pretty much two guys on this list that are coming back from injury that were limited that we have. Everybody else pretty much played in the last game. So Jimmy G, and then it was Raheem Mostert. He's coming back from an MCL injury from week 2, I believe. That's where he got taken out. So just something to monitor for Jerick McKinnon. I think Jerick McKinnon's going to have a good week because they're still going to limit Mostert this week. But Mostert should have a role. I'm probably not starting Mostert this week. I want to see what his role will be. But yeah, so Colin, who you going to talk on?
Well, speaking on OBJ, he was ripping COD last night on stream, so I'm sure he'll be fine to play this weekend. But interesting on Ridley. So I'm actually kind of curious since he didn't catch a single ball and had 5 targets Monday night. I wonder if that's going to play into this injury, and maybe he does miss a week because of that. So it'll be interesting. I'm more interested to see how watching him throughout the week and see how that progresses. But we can move on to the missed practices players. So we got Terry McLaurin, Julio Jones, Noah Fant, Lamar Jackson, Juju Smith-Schuster, and Deontay Johnson monitor going forward with his concussion protocol situation. But the one that was interesting to me was Lamar Jackson got a knee injury. Now, I don't know how serious that is, but, as a running quarterback or a mobile quarterback, to say the least, that could affect him or hinder him a little bit if he does play through it. Mike, what is your opinion on that?
I think it is definitely something to monitor. It could just be rest because a lot of people, like I believe Hollywood Brown was limited with a knee injury as well. It could be them, saying, oh, he's got a little knee pain. We're just going to keep him out of practice kind of thing. I don't think it's really something to be concerned about. I haven't heard anything. And just to touch on Terry McLaurin, he missed practice almost all of last week and played an absolutely incredible game. So I don't think it's anything to be concerned about. One I would be concerned about would be Julio. He really didn't have a great game. He left halfway through. And I mean, old guys with hamstrings, we've said it over and over and over again. I actually rejected a trade for Julio. It wasn't a terrible trade, but I just really don't think I can pick him up in Dynasty going forward. Steve, you got anything else to add to these guys?
Noah Fant doesn't look like he's playing this week. Vic Fangio said that it's going to be a long shot and that he is trending in the wrong direction. So grab a backup for Noah Fant if you don't have one already. And yeah, speaking on Juju, because I am a Juju owner, right now it's looking like it's not looking good, but he hasn't been ruled out yet. So there's always that. We'll have to monitor that in the upcoming days. They're not going to rule any of these guys out yet, so we're just going to have to keep an eye. That's pretty much all we can say for right now. Colin?
Yeah, sorry, I'm yawning. Yeah, I agree. I think Julio, though, with the whole hamstring thing, you can still see he can ball out from week one production. It definitely sucked. It's unfortunate that I think he came back too soon. I think you should just wait a few more weeks because, like you said, hamstrings linger, and that's how you make it worse. So yeah, definitely hope. I don't think he'll play. I think he's out. So I wouldn't even worry about the missed practice. I just think he's not going to play. And we can move on to the actual ruled out players for tomorrow Thursday night game from the Bucks. So this might help your team, Mike. You actually have a chance to win this game because the Bucks ruled out basically everyone on their offense. So Chris Godwin's out, LaShawn McCoy, Justin Watson, and then you got Mike Evans and Scotty Miller, who are both questionable. And then even Fournette is doubtful. And they said yesterday, I guess they changed it to doubtful today, but yesterday they said that it's probably not going to happen. But if he has a chance, he has a chance now with doubtful. So, Mike, how do you feel about that with your Bears playing them tomorrow?
I always root for good football, so it kind of does suck, but I do root for the Bears first. So I am pleased that they will not be at 100%. The defense has looked kind of suspect, which as a Bears fan is very weird. I'm used to the defense being the only reason why I watch the game. Um, they've had some unlucky calls go against them, and I I really could see this being a low scoring game and throwing it back to the regular Thursday night stinkers that we're used to. But I think the Bears at least have a chance now. If the Bucks were at 100%, there would be no chance. I try, but that offense looked absolutely brutal. Matt Nagy's play calling went back to running the ball 8 times, I believe, in the second half or something ridiculously low. It was absolutely just terrible play calling. But Steve, what are you thinking about the Thursday night game?
It's going to be a tough one. I think both of these teams are. I think the Bucks are a really good team, but without Godwin and McCoy's pretty much been irrelevant this year. But Justin Watson's a good depth piece to have. With Mike Evans not being healthy, you're still going to see him if he's out on the field. He's still going to be a monster. You saw him limping around the whole game last week, and he was still dominant. Scotty Miller actually had a underrated game last week, so he's another one that you could flex if he's in the lineup. I really don't know the depth on the Bucks too much right now, but I think you're going to see more Cameron Brate. We brought him up yesterday. I think he's going to have a big role, and I think you're going to see Gronk a little bit more too in the passing, mostly because they don't have any other options, especially if Evans or Miller's out. I think you're going to see one of those two, Brate or Gronk, just have an amazing game. Colin?
Yeah, I would definitely prop bet Cameron Brate touchdown. It's basically going to be a gimme at this point. So let's move on to that football news. So Dwayne Haskins, the starting quarterback of the Washington football team, has been officially benched, and Mr. Ron Rivera has decided to choose his former quarterback from the Carolina Panthers, Kyle Allen, to start this Sunday, and Alex Smith will be the backup. So, Mike, what do you write down here? This is all you now.
Yeah. So, basically, Dwayne Haskins went from being the starter and being Ron Rivera's guy, as you said in many interviews, to being the third string quarterback. Alex Smith is the backup. Haskins didn't even take a single rep at quarterback in practice today. And I believe their undrafted QB, Steven Montez, who is part of the practice squad, took reps over Dwayne Haskins. They're really not happy with him. I thought he had a decent game this past week. I could be wrong on that, but he was finally showing some promise, and then they just bench him. Like he threw over 300 yards. He didn't throw a touchdown or an interception, but he did run for one, I believe, on a QB sneak. I don't really understand it, but Ron Rivera clearly didn't like what he saw, and Kyle Allen's the guy now, I guess. Steve, what are you seeing with this whole situation?
Dwayne Haskins stinks. And last game, it was all garbage time yards where he put up the 314. He did not look good the entire game, and then obviously garbage time. He brought his stats up to make it look somewhat decent. And then obviously the rushing touchdown helped him for fantasy. You take the rushing touchdown away, he didn't have a good week. And yeah, I'll just say that if Drew Lock got drafted where Haskins did, and then Haskins dropped to Denver, I would not be happy right now. So I'm in a good spot. I'm pretty ecstatic. Colin?
It's interesting though, because yeah, like Mike said, he threw for over 300 yards, and it was against the Baltimore Ravens, nonetheless. So that's pretty. I mean, he kind of balled out. Like, I mean, he didn't throw a touchdown.
Garbage time.
Kind of
garbage time.
Yeah, that's fair. Okay, we don't talk about Haskins anymore. Let's move on to that Week 5 preview segment where we're gonna talk some like one line each and one over and under. So, Mike, start us off. Who do you got?
All right, I have, and this was probably one of my favorite lines. It was Jacksonville +6 at Houston. I love Jacksonville. They're usually pretty good against the spread because they love to score garbage time points. Houston just lost their coach. I mean, their players will be playing fairly hard now because usually with a new coach comes new players, so they will be playing for their jobs next year. But I really like the Jacksonville to keep it inside the number. And my favorite over-under is the under in the Bears game because there will be 0 points at all. Both defenses are pretty good, even though I just said the Bears defense sucks. But their defense, they're more of a bend, don't break defense, which is something that I'm not used to. And there will be a ton of field goals because that's what the Bears defense does now, I guess. And the Bears can't score points, so that's even more field goals. So under 44.5 and Jacksonville +6. Duval. Steve, your line and over under, buddy?
Mike, correct me if I'm wrong, but Indianapolis is right now favored to win against Cleveland.
That is correct. Yep.
Huh. Okay. I'm still not a fan of Indianapolis this year. Their defense has been good, like really good, but I still don't trust it. I don't know why. I think it's just me looking at the Colts, thinking that they stink. I don't really like Phillip Rivers this year. I do love their run game. I love their O-line, but yeah, I'm just not a huge fan. I think Cleveland actually takes this game. Colin's going to love that. And yeah, so yeah, I'll take that's probably my favorite one. Like everything else looks pretty realistic. And I'm probably going to take over under. Ooh, I'm going to say Atlanta and Carolina. Right now it's at what, Mike? I can't see. It's 54.
Yeah, 54.5.
54.5. Yeah, I'm gonna take the over there. I think it's gonna be a shootout. Colin?
I'm going to take the under on the Dallas Cowboys and the New York Giants because the Giants defense is ranked 5th right now, surprisingly. And the Giants offense can't score to save their lives and the Cowboys defense sucks, but the Cowboys offense is really good. So I think it's going to balance out and it's not going to hit 54 points. So I'm going to take the under on that of 54. For the spread, that's a tough one. I actually will take the -7 for the Seahawks over the Vikings. Just because I don't think the Vikings can, I think the Seahawks got them. Seahawks have one of the worst defense, actually, surprisingly. But Russ is going to cook. Let him cook. So I'm going to take that. Seahawks under -7.
I'm going to jump in here, too. I actually don't mind that Giants +10. The Cowboys defense stinks, as you guys said. I mean, their offense kind of stinks, too. But I think they keep it within 10. That's a football number, so I think they keep within it. But that's my 2 cents.
Nice. Okay, so let's move on to that start and sit segment. Mike, who are you starting?
I'm starting Jerick McKinnon of the San Francisco 49ers. I believe I saw a story that it was that Mostert was doubtful to um, actually play this week, but which means basically wheels up for Jerick McKinnon. But he's playing I believe that they play Miami, whose defense is awful. Um, and they're basically going to be running out the clock for the final fourth quarter. And if Mostert isn't back, then that means Jerick McKinnon gets all that work because clearly Jeff Wilson is awful. So Jerick McKinnon's my start, and and it's even gonna get better if Jimmy G comes back. Steve, I'll go to yours, buddy.
My start of the week is Deebo Samuel. And it's Deebo Samuel because he plays against the Miami Dolphins. They're not that great. And yeah, so another reason he's coming back from injury. They actually didn't use him at full capacity last game, and they were easing him back in because of his foot injury. I think they're going to let him run a little bit more. I would project probably around 60 to 70% of snaps, and he's the guy. We watched Brandon Ayuk play, and he was good, but he wasn't fantastic in the weeks that Deebo wasn't there. I think Deebo is the number one guy, and he's going to get the rushing work. So my start of the week is Deebo Samuel. Colin?
My start of the week is James Robinson of the Jacksonville Jaguars. He's playing the worst run defense in the league in the Houston Texans. And in the forgotten episode a couple of weeks ago, I said he was going to run all over the Dolphins. Or no, it wasn't Dolphins. Yeah, it might have been the Dolphins. But he did. So he's going to continue to roll. He's looking great as an undrafted free agent, and he's going to eat against one of the worst defenses for running. So I project a couple touchdowns out of this guy this week. So Mike, who is your first sit of the week?
My first sit is Cooper Kupp. I really don't see it this week. I was gonna say Robert Woods, but he is fairly consistent. So I decided to go with Cooper Kupp. They're playing the Washington football team, whose defense is actually fairly solid. They're second in allowing points to wide receivers, mostly because they can't cover tight ends. So I think Higbee's going to absolutely ball out. But basically, I don't see it for Cooper Kupp this week. I think that, one, they're going to be ahead because Kyle Allen stinks, and so they're going to be running the ball and hopefully using Cam Akers to run that ball. But I really just don't see it this week for Cooper Kupp. I really just don't see the volume and the points coming. Steve, your sit of the week?
I'm going to go with rookie CeeDee Lamb. We already talked about the game. Colin brought it up. We don't think it's going to be a high-scoring game. We could totally be wrong because Dallas' offense is insane. But we are projecting a fairly low-scoring game against the Giants. The Giants' defense is surprisingly good. And CD has been phenomenal so far, but his big games have come against Atlanta. And, his big game against Atlanta was the only time he received over 100 yards. And then he scored 2 touchdowns against Cleveland. So if you take those 2 touchdowns away, he just had a modest game. So I think with a lower scoring game against the Giants and the Giants defense actually looking decent, I think CD would be a sit this week. I think you can find better receivers or running backs to flex because that's where you would play CD anyways. Colin?
So my sit is David Montgomery of the Chicago Bears. He's playing the second best team at running, like stopping the run, and that is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And just judging off of what he did against the last 2 weeks with Atlanta and Indianapolis, averaging just under 3 yards a carry at 2.9. I just don't like the opportunity for him this week. I don't think he's going to, even if he does get the ball like 10 to 15 times, it's just like you're going to get like what I said, basically 2.7 to 3-ish yards a carry. But he does have a little bit of upside catching the balls. But even then, he only caught 3 for 6 targets for like 30 yards. So, I mean, he can catch, but it's not relevant enough to start him in a flex role. I don't think he's going to produce this week, especially against one of the best defenses. So, yeah, that was a quick one, guys. But
Yeah, that was
do we have anything else you really want to talk about?
Honestly, there wasn't really much between episodes. I could go into a bit more gambling, but I mean, I'm looking at the lines. I love the Saints -8. I don't think the Chargers will keep it anywhere close. I actually like the over in the Giants and Cowboys. Both their defenses stink, so that usually means points. Like the Giants' offense, sure it's not great, but I think the Cowboys, like, I don't think they've scored less than 30, which means you need, 20-ish from the Giants, which is not terrible to ask with the Dallas defense. Um, I like. Is there any other ones you guys like?
Colin, you talk on it a little bit. I want to go into a couple of my favorite DraftKings players of the week.
I'm not a gambler, so I have nothing really to say. Steven, talk about your DraftKings players of the week.
I can actually go into a couple prop.
Might go into a couple more while Steven looks for his players.
Okay, so looking at the, there's no prop bets up yet. Never mind. But I really just don't like. There's a lot of lines that aren't out yet as the taping of this episode, so it is a little tough. And with the COVID, I will actually go into that a bit, I guess, while we wait for Steve. And basically, like going into the teams that had COVID on the other team, they have special procedures where basically all players and personnel have to wear personal protective equipment, masks, gloves at all times during practice, during walking into the building. Like, even so, when linemen are doing like blocking drills, they have to wear gloves. They also have to wear a face shield on around their mouth and their and like a visor. The only thing that is exempt from this rule is the quarterback's throwing hand. They don't have to wear a glove, but if you know, there is a certain quarterback who wears 2 gloves at all times, Teddy Bridgewater, who's, I guess, extra safe during this pandemic. Colin, you got anything to add to that while we wait for Steve?
Steve, you still struggling over there, eh?
No, I can talk whenever you guys are done
All right.
making fools of yourselves.
Go ahead. I filled time.
Okay, so right now my favorite QB of the week for DraftKings is Teddy Bridgewater. Mike just talked on his 2 gloves technique. He's playing against Atlanta, really bad defense. Right now he's only 5,900 on DraftKings, so he would be my go-to. I'm taking him everywhere that I can. In DraftKings, I'll be playing against Mike when we get that going. I'm looking, obviously you can get really cheap backups that somehow become starters, like Kyle Allen. So if you really don't want to spend a lot on a QB, Kyle Allen is he'd be okay playing against the Rams. So definitely not one of my favorites. But if you're just looking cheap, he'd be an okay grab.
Would you look at Daniel Jones for 5,400?
No,
Not even against the Dallas defense.
No, because he's going to fumble probably 4 times.
All right. Continue.
I'm going to stack Bridgewater with Robbie Anderson. Again, this is the Atlanta defense they're playing against. So I'm going to go for the stack. Robbie Anderson has been the number 1 guy. So he's probably my favorite target at wide receiver for only 5,900. And that's fairly cheap for what he's been doing so far this year. Sticking with this game, I'm going to go with Russell Gage. With Calvin Ridley being injured and not being fully healthy and Julio potentially missing, I think Russell Gage could be a really, really cheap blow up game, 5,100. And then another guy that I think is really cheap, James Washington, 4,900. And Juju and Deontay are both questionable for the game. So that's something you'd have to look at last minute before the game starts. You'd have to grab them there. We already talked about the running backs, my two favorite, Jerick McKinnon and James Robinson. I love those guys. They're cheap and they're going to ball out because there's no other options on their team right now. So those guys are both great options. At the tight end, it's pretty much, you never know what's going to happen. Hayden Hurst, stay with the Atlanta-Carolina game if you want. I think Evan Engram could be decent in this game. He's playing against Dallas. Dallas's defense is not good. So I think he could be decent. And then you could always try to grab a cheap guy like Eric Ebron, 4,000 against Philadelphia. I think he could be a good stream too. So there's my quick DraftKings rundown for cheap players. Colin?
Yeah, so I don't know. I want Mike's opinion on DraftKings because he actually beat you.
Yeah, I was actually surprised that there was no insight from clearly the better DraftKings player, but whatever. I'll digress. I actually saw a deal on a player. I believe it was 4,300, and that, or actually 4,400, and that is Tim Patrick. What do you think about Tim Patrick as a cheap wide receiver, Steve?
I don't mind it because realistically in DraftKings you're looking for boom or bust plays. That's how you win the money. You're not going to win money off a guy consistently getting you 10 points. So I think he has a potential to be a boom play, but he also could get you 0. I don't think he's really that safe. I think I was looking at guys that could they're going to have the volume. They're going to be safe, but they also have the volume to ball out, like Russell Gage. We've already seen it this year. James Washington, if he's the guy, then I think Big Ben is just gonna throw him the ball nonstop because Claypool's gonna be there too, but I think James Washington just has the rapport with Big Ben a little bit more. Robbie Anderson, like I said, he's just been dominant already this year, so those are some big plays. I don't mind the Tim Patrick if you're looking to spend down a little bit more because he is quite a bit cheaper, but I'm okay. If you said you were drafting Tim Patrick this week against New England, I'm okay with it.
Yeah, and then I look at I don't mind Mike Davis against Atlanta at 6,400. It's a decent price to pay, but I think he gets all the work, and I think he's good for that. But as a cheap guy, I don't really see anyone that's really worth using. So usually I like to go cheaper wide receivers and try and go for a boom guy and then go with the more safe running backs, but that's just my strategy. Do you have any favorite defenses? Do you have any defenses that you'd basically put in every lineup?
I really like the Cardinals, but they are one of the more expensive defenses. They're playing the Jets, and it looks like Flacco is going to start for them. If we're looking closer to the bottom, I do like Washington's defense in DraftKings because they get the sacks and they get the tackles, and they're just a really good all-around defense for points in fantasy. Same with the Texans. They play Jacksonville, and I think that could be decent if you're looking to spend down. But my favorite, if you don't really care about spending on defenses, I think the Cardinals are probably the best bet there with 4,100.
I actually don't mind the Rams defense as well, but I mean that is on the expensive side. But if I was to go with a cheap defense, I would go. I'm about the same. I don't mind the Jags against Houston. Usually Deshaun Watson gets sacked about 1 billion times. So that's not a bad one. That's
Broncos,
really all I can say.
The Broncos could be good too against Brian Hoyer.
Yeah. You basically look for bad quarterbacks or bad offenses when you're doing that, but Yeah, that's it for me. I'm probably good on that.
Do you have
Colin,
any
got anything?
Do you have any tight end streamers, Mike, that you're looking at?
Uh,
Obviously, you have Kittle, Kelsey, and Andrews are going to be
yeah.
expensive, but do you have any guys like I don't know, anybody around 45 or lower?
I actually don't mind Dawson Knox. He's
Hmm.
3,600, so fairly cheap. I wouldn't mind a stream on Darren Fells. He's playing Jacksonville, who can't cover the tight end. Even a Jack Doyle, but
Boo.
I probably wouldn't go Jack Doyle with Trey Burton and Moali Cox playing. But if you really, really need to go discount, it looked like Brian Hoyer was targeting Ryan Izzo, but that's with COVID, that's a concern. But yeah, that's really it for me.
Well,
Got anything else?
there's your DraftKings rundown team. Hope you enjoy it, and I hope you don't, use us because we kind of suck at gambling.
Hey, I'm not bad, not great, but not bad.
That's why we got to bring Pope on, because he nails his predictions every time.
Possibly.
Why does he suck
He
at
was
fantasy
three-
then?
I don't know. He's good at betting, though. He was 3-0. His predictions. But all right, let's wrap this one up. Just want to follow us on Twitter at Day1Football, the Instagram at Day1FF. Subscribe, review, and rate the podcast on all the big platforms and also on YouTube.
Yeah,
All right.
Yeah, I usually end up getting the video up about 12 the next day, but yeah, I do my best.
Yeah, you're killing it, Mike. All right, guys. From everyone here at the podcast, have a great day, and thanks for listening. Peace.
Ooh.